If you're used to other object-oriented programming languages, you're probably familiar with the constructor. You may also be familiar with the constructor being named as the class name. So it's just a method that shares the same name as the class name. In PHP, it's actually simplified in my opinion. You name the constructor method constructor with 2 underscores before it. But what is the point of the constructor? It's there to initialize properties inside the object upon instantiation. PHP calls the constructor method automatically when the object is instantiated. Let's look at some code to see the constructor in detail. We're going to remove the initialization from the eye color, date of birth, and the fur color. All other properties are shared by all German shepherds, like the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, etc. So there's no reason to initialize these every single time. We'll first start off by creating our constructor. Per convention, the constructor is usually right below the properties and right above the rest of the methods. So we'll say public function because it is a method as well, and we'll say constructor. So right here I have 1, 2 underscores. So 1, 2 underscores followed by the keyword constructor, followed by open close parentheses. What we want to do is we'll pass arguments to the constructor on instantiation. We'll assign the eye color, date of birth, and fur color to the German Shepherd through our constructor, since the constructor is called before anything else happens. And right here is where we would declare our parameters. So we'll say something like string eye color, because that's what we want to pass. We also want to pass to this constructor the date of birth, not dog, and string fur color. Great. Now that we have each one of these, I'm just going to move this one over to the next line so that we can see it. As a matter of fact, let's put all these one underneath the other. Remember, PHP, it doesn't matter how many spaces are in between, as long as it follows this kind of same syntax. Great. Now we have our parameters. We can access them, and now all we want to do is set eye color, date of birth, and fur color with whatever is passed here during instantiation. So we would say this eye color is equal to the eye color that we pass as an argument right there. And this eye color refers to that property. So a lot, maybe most of the time, 99% of the times, you want to name them exactly the same thing so it's clear. You can put, for example, X right here and save that as X, just so it's a little bit more clear to see what you're doing right now. But per convention, you want to have these exactly the, pretty much matching exactly the same as what these are right here. We'll then go ahead and repeat the process for date of birth. The date of birth is equal to the argument date of birth. We also want to modify the fur color property and initialize it with whatever is passed through the fur color argument. Everything else stays the same. We're just working on the constructor method this time. So that is it right here. Now that we have that, we can actually remove eye color, remove date of birth, and remove fur color from inside of these, from these properties right here inside the class. Later, underneath, we are going to instantiate our German Shepherd dog, and we're just going to say new German Shepherd. So inside here, this is, or it says required parameter eye color missing. This is where we're going to initialize our properties. So the first property is the eye color. So we're going to say brown again, for example. The next thing that we're doing is the date of birth. So let's say February 20th, 2019. And then the last piece is the fur color, and we're going to say black. Perfect. Now these properties, or these properties up here, have been initialized by going through the constructor and then setting them inside the constructor itself. Let's go ahead and actually see what we get when we say, for example, echo gsdog eye color. We'll do that by going to our browser, hit refresh, open up our constructor, and there it is, brown, which means it worked. But what's the point of having other properties listed as properties if we're not going to initialize them through the constructor? Well, they're this object's characteristics, so that is the best place for them. We can also easily share them between methods and not have to pass them as arguments each time, since the method can just refer to the object's characteristics. So for example, if we go down here, there's that get eye color, which is going to return this eye color. And as a matter of fact, we can actually modify this to call the get eye color method. and that way we can see for a fact that everything is working still. We hit refresh. You can see that it finished loading and it's still displaying brown. I'm going to leave the car class as an exercise for you. So if you want to pause the video right here, right now and do it, go ahead and do it. I'm going to do it myself and then we'll just talk about it so we don't actually have to type up a lot of code, because the car class is a lot more abstract. If you look at it right here, it doesn't specify a specific object. It specifies the abstract concept that makes up a car. In our dog example above, if it was dog, then we'd have to set all the different properties, but because it was German Shepherd, we had to set a lot less properties. In our car class, we're pretty much going to have to specify everything because there can be specific types of cars. So go ahead, pause the video, do it, create your constructor, go ahead and remove any kind of initialization from the properties, and then go ahead and initialize all the different properties. And we'll continue on in a second. Are you done? Great, me too. Let's go over it. So as you can see, all the different initialization from every single property has been removed, and I went ahead and created a constructor with a bunch of different parameters. So we're going to be passing all of these arguments to the constructor upon instantiation. So we specify, for example, the first three are required. So I specified int year, int make, int model. So I know in my previous tutorials, I've always made these required, so I left these as required. Now we can make other arguments optional, like for example, the color. So because we're passing a string, we're gonna want to specify that, hey, we're gonna be initializing this to some string. So most of the time you want to initialize it to just an empty set, right? So for example, open quote, close quote. Field type, I initialized it before to 93, so I kept it here at 93. Horsepower and torque, I didn't have anything initialized, so I initialized these to -1. Why -1? Well, it's still an integer, and it's a good thing for testing a little bit later on, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Then we have the transmission. It's a 5-speed manual transmission, and I placed that there, removed it from the properties. The vehicle type, it was coupe before, but I decided to eliminate the coupe because really, I mean, if you want to set it, you're going to go ahead and set it. Exterior height, width, and length, I set all those to -1. The unit measure, I still left that here as inches. The weight is equal to -1. Weight unit measure is equal to pounds, and the is the car on is equal to false. Inside the body of the constructor, all it does, it takes every single property, basically every single argument, and assigns it to that specific property. So there's the make, model, color, and going down all the way to the end. I did create an additional method, just something real quick, get car details. You guys don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I just wanted to do it for example purposes to make sure everything was working properly. And all it's going to do is just return an array, and it's going to be an associative array that returns not every single attribute, but just the year, make, model, color, fuel type, horsepower, torque, and the transmission. Then down here, I instantiated the Nissan object by doing the new car and then passing the 3 required arguments, which is the year, make, model, and then the color, which is optional, fuel type, and I wanted to modify the torque, so I passed 1000, and actually horsepower I initialized to -1, so I'll keep that as -1. So why did I do this? Well, if for example, let's say I wanted to modify torque, you can see that I have to go in the order, otherwise that changes to horsepower. The way that everything's written, I have to specify, hey, this is horsepower, I want to keep that, you know, initialized to whatever it was, and then torque I want to modify. And then I can modify or change anything after that as well. So now I'm just going to dump this get car details, and I'm going to go to the browser, and I actually already did it. There it is. Returns an array, a year, make, model, color, fuel type, horsepower. Actually, that's dumped with the 0. It should be with the -1. And there's the -1. Torque is 1000. And then the transmission, which I didn't modify, but it was initialized. As you can see, I didn't modify here, but it was initialized inside the constructor right there. And then right there, it actually stated that it's a 5-speed manual transmission. Well, that's pretty much it for constructors. Next time we'll look at destructors.